Beneath the towering spires of glass and metal, the grand hall of the Galactic Council stood as a monument to cooperation, or at least that was the official narrative. The chamber stretched far and high, as if aspiring to pierce the void beyond. Light cascaded down from suspended prisms, casting shifting rainbows across the reflective black floors. Rows of tiered seats ringed the chamber, ascending like the petals of some massive mechanical flower. In the center lay the speaker's podium, a circular platform that rose from the floor whenever the presiding official took command. And there, at the very edge of the outermost tier, sat a single human diplomat. His seat was small, modest, and distant from the chamber's heart, where the influential species gathered, an arrangement that spoke volumes. Humanity's inclusion in the council, though notable on paper, translated to little more than symbolic presence. The galaxy was vast, and the weight of history did not favour those who arrived late. Ambassador Elias Monroe sat with a composed expression, hands resting lightly on the marble-like console before him. His eyes, however, betrayed a quiet intensity as they scanned the chamber. Elias was not unfamiliar with the dynamics of this place. He had attended these sessions for years, watched the way the older civilizations dominated the discourse, and he understood the delicate balance between speaking too little and too much. Humanity's seat was not yet warm. The hall stirred as discussions on interstellar trade routes faded. The earlier debate over tariff agreements between the Silvari Commonwealth and the Tekra Alliance had drawn to a lukewarm resolution, and now the Council shifted, as it always did, toward matters of defense, planetary security, offensive strategies, the tools of war. It was during these moments that humanity's presence became less symbolic and more entertaining to the elder races. Elias adjusted his cuff slightly, knowing what would come next. As projected holodisplays flickered to life across the chamber, council members began showcasing their latest advancements. The holograms cast miniature fleets, shimmering battle formations and weapon schematics above each delegate's seat. Representatives of the Kethari Collective spoke first. Their new plasma projection arrays had increased efficiency by 12%. Next, the Ralnok Dominion displayed advancements in ion-based surface bombardment, boasting precision strikes capable of destabilizing entire tectonic plates with minimal collateral damage. One by one, the major powers presented their technological leaps forward, each advancement sleeker, deadlier, and more efficient than the last. And then the moment arrived. A Zandari delegate, his crystalline form refracting the ambient light, leaned back into his seat with a faint chime as his body shifted. His elongated fingers tapped against the console. "Ambassador Monroe," the Zandari spoke, his voice smooth and melodious. "We have reviewed your latest defense reports. Quite fascinating." Soft chuckles rippled through the hall. Elias allowed himself the faintest of smiles, folding his hands before him. "I appreciate the Council's attention to our development." "Oh, it's difficult not to pay attention," the Zandari replied, the crystalline edges of his face twisting in amusement. "Your railgun platforms, are they truly still the backbone of your defense systems?" A louder wave of laughter followed. Elias didn't flinch. His posture remained upright, every inch the professional diplomat. "Yes," he answered simply. Whispers spread among the delegates, some muttering in disbelief. Others made no effort to hide their derision. A member of the Alathari Dominion, a species whose biomechanical implants covered most of their body, leaned forward with visible curiosity. "I must admit," the Alathari said, his voice accompanied by a faint hum of synthetic chords, "I fail to understand humanity's persistence. Plasma is reliable. Ion cannons are versatile. Why continue with outdated kinetic systems?" The Ralnok representative let out a gravelly chuckle, his armoured bulk settling deeper into his seat. "Railguns?" His mandibles clicked in amusement. "A primitive hammer swung by those too stubborn to craft finer tools. The energy requirements alone would cripple entire fleets." He lazily flicked his hand, as if brushing away an insect. "Why cling to dead technology when the galaxy offers sharper blades?" From across the chamber, another delegate's voice slithered through the air. "Humans are a peculiar breed," it jeered. "Always 1 foot in the past, mistaking rust for strength." More laughter followed. A new voice, low and rasping, broke through the noise. "We used railguns. said a delegate from the Drask Republic. His broad reptilian form leaned forward, claws tapping the armrest. Many centuries ago, before we fully embraced energy weapons, they were novel. He let the word linger, as if describing a quaint but impractical tool. But the flaws were impossible to ignore. Railguns require superconducting materials that degrade under high stress. The energy demands for launching projectiles at sufficient velocities strain even the most efficient reactors. Barrel erosion, limited rate of fire, and complex magnetic calibration. The Drask smiled, rows of sharp teeth glinting under the chamber lights. The list goes on. Why cling to something we discarded as impractical? He tilted his head toward Elias. You believe, after centuries of failure across countless species, that humanity alone can overcome these technical hurdles? The delegate leaned forward, eyes narrowing with a predatory glint. Clinging to that belief isn't determination, it's delusion. A child hammering at stone, convinced they'll forge a star. Another ripple of laughter coursed through the hall, some delegates nodding in agreement. Elias allowed the moment to pass before speaking. He let the chamber revel in their perceived superiority. Finally, as the laughter began to settle, he leaned forward. There is a saying on Earth, he said, his voice calm but firm. The chamber grew quieter. Some leaned in slightly, curious. I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, Elias continued, his eyes slowly moving across the faces of the council. But I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. A thick silence descended upon the hall. The delegates exchanged glances. For the briefest of moments, the mockery had subsided, replaced by an unspoken uncertainty. But as quickly as the silence came, it shattered. The Zandari delegate's crystalline shoulders quivered as he chuckled. A charming sentiment, he mused, but I suspect it will take more than 10,000 kicks to sway the tide of war. The laughter resumed, louder this time, as though to erase whatever brief discomfort Elias's words had evoked. The Drask delegate's voice echoed through the chamber once more. Your stubbornness will be your downfall, human, he growled. If you refuse to adapt, you will perish. And when that day comes, don't come knocking at our door for salvation. You'll find none waiting for you. Elias said nothing more. He sat back, hands folded, and watched as the session continued. From the farthest seat in the grand chamber, humanity remained distant, but perhaps not unnoticed. The day arrived far sooner than anyone had anticipated. The Zarok, a species notorious for their aggressive expansionism, rarely needed more than a sliver of justification to unleash their fleets. War was not just strategy for them, it was tradition, a constant reaffirmation of their dominance. This time, the excuse was as trivial as ever. A dense asteroid belt rich in rare minerals drifted near Zarok-claimed space. Earth's mining ships began extraction, either unaware of the proximity or indifferent to it. To the Zarok, this was a violation. Their emissaries arrived at the Galactic Council, draped in ceremonial war armor, and demanded compensation, an amount so staggering it was clearly meant to provoke. Ambassador Elias Monroe's response was brief. Try again. The calm in his voice felt sharper than any threat. Within the hour, the Zarok declared war. The Zarok armada gathered at the edge of humanity's solar system, a black mass stretching across the void. The dreadnought Bane of Suns led the formation, flanked by hundreds of smaller warships. The council held session to address the brewing conflict, though the outcome was already decided in their eyes. If only they had accepted the technology we offered, the Zandari delegate mused aloud, his voice tinged with a false pity. They might have stood a chance against the Zarok. Stubbornness is a poor substitute for wisdom. Or perhaps they believe the stories they tell themselves, the Cathari delegate said. He leaned forward, voice laced with mockery. What was it their ambassador said? I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times, the Cathari recited in amusement. The council chuckled. Delegates leaned back in their seats, murmuring quietly as they watched. We could extend a formal offer of surrender, the Ralnok diplomat suggested. The Drask waved his hand dismissively. Why? They'll be here within days asking for peace. But as the Zarok fleet closed in, humanity remained silent. No distress signals, no pleas for assistance, no ambassadors asking for asylum. Earth stood alone. At first, the council found this amusing. By the third day, the amusement shifted to confusion. Still no surrender? The Zandari muttered, coils tightening around his seat. They glanced at the projection of Earth's defences, orbital stations armed with railguns. Primitive, outdated, yet the humans made no attempts to negotiate. They will perish, the Drask whispered at last, and when they do, let them burn in their arrogance. The Zarok fleet emerged from the black veil of space, an ominous shadow blotting the stars at the edges of Earth's territory. Leading the charge was the Bane of Suns, a dreadnought, one of the largest warships in the galaxy. It was not just a ship, it was the ship, looming in the void like a drifting city of nightmares, stretching over 15 kilometers in length, with its shadow capable of swallowing entire fleets. Known across the galaxy as the Planet Killer, it was more than a warship. It was a harbinger of annihilation. Its surface shimmered with black alloy plating, crafted from an unknown material that absorbed light and radar signals, rendering it nearly invisible to long-range sensors. The hull was an impenetrable fortress, forged in the cores of dying stars, capable of withstanding direct starship collision strikes without so much as a scratch. Wrapped around this behemoth was an energy shield so powerful that even planetary defense beams fizzled into harmless sparks upon contact. The Planet Killer's armament was unrivaled. Banks of plasma cannons, ion turrets the size of skyscrapers, and arrays of siege missiles designed to pierce planetary crusts. But its true terror lay in the Oblivion Lance, a superweapon capable of erasing entire cities in one devastating pulse. Legends whispered that it could reduce continents to ash in moments. Within its depths, swarms of fighter craft lay nestled in cavernous hangars, ready to flood the stars with death. Automated defense turrets lined every corridor and bulkhead, ensuring that even boarding parties would find no victory. The Planet Killer didn't just wage war. It ended civilizations. Entire species had surrendered at the mere sight of its approach. To stand against it was considered suicide. On the bridge of Bane of Suns, Supreme Warlord Jarkul stood tall, his scarred face and crimson eyes fixed on the blue marble ahead. Earth, a planet daring to defy them with nothing more than primitive weaponry and defiance. Commander Jarkul smirked as his ship's systems scanned Earth's defenses. What little resistance he detected barely registered as a threat. He glanced over at his officers, their expressions calm, almost bored. The battle would be nothing more than a formality. Jarkul sneered. They didn't even send emissaries to negotiate. They know what's coming. A faint chuckle rose from the crew. Confidence saturated the bridge like thick fog. Humanity was just another primitive race, clinging to obsolete weapons in a galaxy that had long surpassed them. The Council had warned Earth, abandon railguns, plasma is the future. Yet the humans persisted, stubborn, foolish. A comms officer reported, "Fleet is in position, Warlord. All vessels ready." Jarkul leaned forward. "Transmit our message. Let them see what true power looks like." "Humans," the message began, the metallic timbre of Jarkul's voice echoing through the command channels. "You now bear witness to the most advanced vessel ever constructed. The Bane of Suns stands before you, ready to deliver judgment. This is what an actual weapons of war can achieve." Jarkul's voice dripped with condescension as he continued his broadcast. "Your primitive defenses will not stand." A sharp crackle interrupted him, cutting through the comms channel like a blade. For a moment, silence filled the bridge. Jarkul's crimson eyes narrowed. Then a reply. The voice was calm, measured, yet carried an undercurrent of something far more dangerous. "The thunder you hear isn't the storm. It's our railgun firing." Jarkul blinked. The bridge fell deathly quiet, officers glancing at one another in confusion. "What?" Jarkul growled. "Who dares?" Before the words fully left his mouth, alarms blared across the deck. Sensor arrays screamed warnings of a projectile inbound, moving faster than their systems could even register. "Warlord," the tactical officer shouted, panic lacing his voice. Something is coming straight for us!" Jarkul's eyes flicked to the viewport. Beyond the void of space, Earth hung like a fragile jewel. But no weapon fire, no fleet maneuvers were visible. "Nothing will happen to the Bane of Suns," Jarkul snapped, his tone ice cold. "Our armor—" The officer cut him off, voice trembling. "Warlord, it's moving beyond measure, faster than any projectile in recorded history." The bridge shuddered. Someone whispered, barely audible, "Impossible." A hole. No, a canyon. The railgun slug punched through the dreadnought's forward plating, shredding through kilometers of advanced armor as if it were paper. It passed effortlessly through the Bane of Suns, front to rear, and still the slug didn't falter, its momentum unyielding. Behind the dreadnought, 3 escort cruisers and a carrier lined up in perfect formation. The projectile pierced through them all. On Earth, hidden beneath layers of reinforced alloy and kilometers of hardened bedrock, humanity's railgun, known officially as the Titan Spear, was their most closely guarded secret. Lying deep within the desolate plains of a forgotten military complex, it stretched over 30 kilometers in length, anchored to the planet itself like a colossal spine of war. Unlike the sleek plasma weapons favored by the rest of the galaxy, the Titan Spear was raw, brutal engineering. Its structure was an imposing blend of darkened metals and superconductive rails, each one lined with magnetic coils the size of skyscrapers. The weapon's frame resembled a massive industrial trench, with conduits and power relays stretching across the landscape like veins. The firing mechanism alone consumed more energy in a single shot than entire cities used in a month. It drew power directly from the planet's geothermal reserves, augmented by fusion reactors buried beneath the surface. The weapon's capacitors, colossal spheres of tempered alloy, could store the unimaginable voltage required to propel a slug at a measurable fraction of light speed. But the true marvel of the Titan Spear wasn't its size or power. It was the ammunition. Crafted from an exotic alloy unknown to the rest of the galaxy, each slug was forged in orbital foundries under conditions that mimicked the cores of collapsing stars. This material, nicknamed Void Steel by Earth's engineers, was denser than neutronium and harder than anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. Not even the shields of the Bane of Suns could withstand its impact. When the Titan Spear fired, it didn't just launch a projectile. It unleashed devastation. The shot itself was invisible to the naked eye, a blur of distorted space as the slug tore through the atmosphere. A sonic boom followed seconds later, shaking continents as the round pierced the void. The weapon's speed was so extreme that friction with Earth's atmosphere caused faint auroras to bloom along its path. Firing the Titan Spear was not a declaration of war. It was the hammer of gods, an instrument of finality. Aboard the failing ship, Bane of Suns, Zarok staggered forward, claws digging into the metal console as the deck shuddered violently beneath his feet. The bridge lights flickered, alarms blaring in every direction. His mandibles twitched in agitation. "Report!" Zarok barked, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. No immediate response. His officers frantically scanned their consoles, wide-eyed and pale, struggling to process the data flooding their screens. "Commander!" One finally managed, his voice trembling. We don't know. Something pierced the hull, lengthwise. It passed straight through. Zarok's narrowed pupils locked onto him. Through? Another violent tremor rocked the bridge, accompanied by a deep, resonant groan from within the Bane of Suns. Lights flickered again, this time more slowly, ominously, as warning signals pulsed blood-red across every monitor. The dreadnought, the officer hesitated, staring at his readings in disbelief, is disintegrating. "Sir, the core has been compromised." Outside the viewport, the destruction was undeniable. 4 Zarok ships in perfect formation behind the Bane of Suns now drifted lifelessly, glowing with molten edges where they had been pierced by the same shot that eviscerated the dreadnought. A single shot. Impossible. Someone whispered as the bridge crew stared at the annihilation of their armada's pride. Zarok's teeth ground together, fury replacing shock. "Fire everything we have!" he snarled, slamming his fist against the console. "Launch every missile, erase them from existence." The bridge crew hesitated, looking at one another nervously. "Sir, all systems are offline." The officer's voice cracked. "Weapons, flight, shields, everything. We're going down." Zarok's breath hitched for a brief second. "Restore them." "We can't." Through the comms, another voice pierced the tension, calm but urgent. "All ships, retreat immediately." Zarok's eyes narrowed. He recognized the voice instantly. Raltan, his second in command. "Raltan!" Zarok growled, slamming the comm panel. "I have not given that order, you fool." There was a brief pause. Then Raltan's voice returned, low but resolute. I'm sorry, sir, but you are already dead, and we refuse to follow you into the grave. Jarkul's claws clenched so hard the metal creaked beneath his grip. You coward! Who knows what else humanity is hiding? Raltan cut him off sharply, his voice rising. If they can destroy the Bane of Suns with a single shot, what chance do we have? I won't gamble the fleet on a fight we can't win. Outside the viewport, Jarkul watched as the remaining warships peeled away from the dreadnought's wreckage, engines blazing as they fled toward the edges of the system. I will have your head for this, Jarkul growled, his voice trembling with rage. You won't. Raltan's voice softened, almost regretful. Goodbye, Commander. One by one, the Zarok vessels slipped into hyperspace, vanishing from view. Jarkul remained on the bridge, standing tall as flames crept along the bulkheads, his gaze fixed on Earth, distant and untouched. By the time the last of the fleet retreated, the Bane of Suns, once the most feared dreadnought in the galaxy, was little more than drifting wreckage. The Galactic Council chamber stood in stunned silence. The holographic projection of Earth's outer orbit flickered faintly before them, frozen on the last frame. The wreckage of the Bane of Suns. The once majestic dreadnought, feared across the stars, was now nothing more than smouldering debris drifting lifelessly toward the gravity well of Jupiter. No one spoke. No one dared. The destruction of a 15-kilometer dreadnought, the most advanced warship ever crafted, by a single shot wasn't just unprecedented. It was unthinkable. Chairs creaked as delegates shifted uneasily, eyes darting across the chamber, searching for answers that did not exist. Finally, the Zandari diplomat broke the silence. His crystalline body shimmered nervously. What did we just witness? What just happened? A nearby Ralnok ambassador, his silvered armor clinking as he stood, muttered in disbelief. It cannot be. The Bane of Suns. Hull was forged in the heart of dying stars. That plating should withstand orbital collisions. Its shield was capable of absorbing directed stellar flares. Nothing should have penetrated that. And yet, Ralnok gestured toward the flickering projection, eyes narrowing. It lies in pieces. The silence resumed, heavy with realization. The Drask diplomat leaned forward, his broad reptilian form shifting inconveniently. A railgun. That was a railgun slug. But at that speed, that distance. He paused, struggling to process his own words. That slug pierced the entire fleet, not just the mothership. What kind of kinetic force achieves such devastation? Whispers spread like wildfire through the chamber. The energy required, it would have to approach extreme supersonic speeds, one diplomat murmured. No, far faster, another interrupted. That flash, it was measurable, a fraction of light speed. No civilization has ever managed to push railgun technology to such levels. The heat generated alone would melt the barrel before it fired. And even if they did, Zorvax added grimly, no known material exists that could survive such acceleration. The slug should have disintegrated before leaving the atmosphere. The implications of that statement sent shivers down the spines of the gathered leaders. A pale-skinned ambassador from the Valari Dominion shook his head slowly. Then the question is simple. What are the humans using? More whispers. What kind of material could endure such forces? And how did they generate that much power without destabilizing their planet? How did they overcome those limitations? If one shot could destroy the dreadnought, imagine what an orbital volley could do to an armada. There were more questions than answers, each one more unsettling than the last. The Council, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves unnerved by the sheer impossibility of it all. The idea that humanity had managed to achieve what no civilization before them had even dreamed of, pushing the boundaries of science and engineering to levels beyond comprehension, was enough to send a chill down the spine of every leader present. The implications were too vast, too terrifying to fully grasp. What else were the humans capable of? If they could accomplish this, what other impossible feats lay hidden beneath the surface of their rapidly advancing civilization? And worse yet, what more were they keeping from the galaxy? The fear of the unknown gnawed at them, gnawing deeper with every passing second. The silence that followed was thick with dread and embarrassment, a silent acknowledgement of humanity's potential to upend everything they had ever known. For the first time, the Council wasn't just afraid of what humans had done, they were afraid of what they might do next. On that day, the Bane of Suns fell, the Titan spear fired only once, and in that single shot, humanity had silenced the stars.